Hello. For tonight's Grizzly Tale, I'm going to read you a story from More Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids. These are cautionary tales that I wrote for lovers of squeam. Tonight's story is called
It's only a game, sport. This story was told to me by an old Australian bushman in an old Australian bar. After loosening his neck with 6 tubes of the amber nectar, this is how he told it. Good day. Ever wondered why we Australians build our houses on stilts? And it's not to get the aerial higher for better reception on our television sets. I mean, what'd be the point? Have you ever seen the programmes they make us watch? God save us all from Australian soap operas. I'd rather watch a sheep pass a tapeworm. No, the reason we build our houses off the ground, so you've got to climb up a ladder to get to the front door, is snakes. You should see the size of some of our snakes. Make your hair curl, they would. Make your toes curl as well if they bit you. Deadly they are, the taipan, the copperhead and the death adder. Never stop to ask the time of a taipan, because when you meet one of those poisonous fellas, it's time for one thing and one thing only. It's time to meet your maker. Anyway, that's snakes. This is a story about a bad loser. It's about a boy called Bruce, his mother Sheila, his father Shane, and his little sister Kitty. They lived in one of those houses on stilts and kept a pet koala in the kitchen. When they were young, Shane and Sheila were pretty damned famous for being athletes. They were fit and tanned and both had long hair, bleached blonde by the sun. When they got older, they fell apart a bit, but that's a different story. In their prime, Sheila and Shane were top dogs at all sports. Running, cricket, swimming, football, rugby, tennis, crocodile wrestling, kangaroo boxing, scorpion scrapping. You name it, they won it. But all this success went to their heads, and the idea that one could play a game for fun soon became an alien concept to them. They only played to win. Now, the trouble with parents is that they assume that what was right for them must also be right for their kids. When their son Bruce was born, both of them assumed that he'd be a chip off the old block. So they taught him that winning was everything and that losing was not an option. And lo and behold, Bruce became a nightmare in nappies. He had to win everything from sandcastle building to pick a stick, from platypus riding to snap, from cheese rolling to hangman, from wombat racing to draw the well dry. Whatever it was, Bruce had to be the best. He had to destroy the other runners in the egg and spoon race, humiliate the creepers in grandmother's footsteps, and eat every child in the room in What's the Time, Mr. Wolf. But of course he didn't, because he wasn't a chip off the old block. Life had dealt Bruce an ironic hand. How shall I put this? He was bad at games. He was basically uncoordinated. He was the boy whose boot came off when he kicked the ball, the boy who let go of the cricket bat in the middle of the shot, the boy who tripped over his own feet, the boy with the pigeon chest and the matchstick arms and legs. It was because of this, and because he had to win at everything but couldn't, that he became the world's worst loser. When he lost, he cried like a howling monkey, beat his chest and kicked the floor. He punched the walls and slapped his opponents, tore off his clothes, chewed the carpet, kicked small pets, screamed till his cheeks went purple and wrenched out his hair in great big chunks. At school he had no friends because they were all scared of him. When he lost his temper, there was no saying what he might do. In football, when he missed a tackle and the other team scored a goal, he blamed everyone else for getting in his way, then ran amok with the white line marker until the pitch looked like it was tied up with string. In the playground, when his conker was exploded by another boy's conker, he claimed he wasn't ready and insisted on having one free swipe with his thunder blaster, which wasn't a conker at all, but a sledgehammer. In the locker room, when he lost at noughts and crosses, he screwed up the paper and forced the winner to swallow it so that the game never happened. And when the boy chundered, Bruce made him swallow it back down again. And on the tennis court, when he lost a point, he broke his racket, called the linesman a fat, blind bat, and cut the net in half with a hedge trimmer. "Now, listen, Bruce," said the Tasmanian games teacher who was umpiring the match. "Winning is not what's important." Bruce stared at him like he was talking Martian speak. "We can't all be good at sports. Some of us are better at other things, writing stories, acting the giddy goat, naming flowers, singing arias, painting with pasta. You get my point? Accept who you are, Bruce. Be the best at what you can do." He turned back to his microphone and addressed the small crowd of parents. "Stanley leads 5... "Don't say it!" Bruce interrupted, bursting into tears like a baby sucking onions. "Say what?" "The score." "Well, I'm the umpire. It's my job." "Stanley leads 5... "You're embarrassing me!" blubbed Bruce. "I'll bite you if you say it." "It's only a game," said the teacher firmly. "Stanley leads 5, love." Bruce sank his teeth into the umpire's leg and was sent home before the blood was dry. Shane and Sheila would not admit defeat. They were winners after all. They had set out to make their son a winner, and a winner he would be. They taught him a hard lesson. If Bruce couldn't win by fair means, it was his duty to cheat. At sports day the next week, Bruce ran the 3-legged race with a broom instead of a partner. "But that's cheating," said one of the other children indignantly. "It's not cheating," sneered Bruce. "It's so I can run faster and win. If you just use that tiny brain of yours for 1 second, you'd work out that another person tied to my leg would just slow me down." Meanwhile, on the other side of the track, Sheila and Shane were having their ears bent by the Tasmanian tennis teacher. "Something's got to change," she said, as the gun fired for the start of the race. "He's the worst loser I've ever seen. He has to learn that he can't always be the best." "Why?" asked Shane. "He is the best, because he comes from the best. We're the best parents in the world." "Come on, Brucey!" Sheila's foghorn of a voice could empty a compost heap of worms. "If he won't let you pass, trip him up with your broomstick." "The point of playing games is to have fun," protested the teacher. "If you win, that's great, but it shouldn't matter if you lose." "Kick him! Kick him! Ram the pole in his ear!" "No, don't try..." "Oh!" Sheila groaned as Bruce finished last and limped over to join them. He was never short of an excuse or two when he lost. There was always something in his eye, or something in his shoe, or something itchy up his billabong. Yeah, got a pulled muscle thingy there," he muttered limply. "The grass was too green, the broom handle gave me a splinter, and I needed a pee all the way round." Hot, stinging tears ran down his cheeks. "They ganged up on me and wouldn't let me pass." "That's called racing," said the teacher. "That's cheating," shouted Bruce. "They knew I was the best, so they wouldn't let me win." "Well, don't stand there blubbing like a girl," hissed Shane. "You're a man, Bruce. If I was robbed of victory, I'd do something about it." "Like what?" spluttered the matchstick boy. Like find the hammer thrower's hammer and drop it on the winner's foot." "Yeah," grinned his mother. "Smash his little bones into dust. That'll teach the dirty cheat not to beat you again." By the time the boy's foot came out of plaster, Bruce had been banned from playing games at school. "He's a bad loser," pronounced the headmaster, "and there's no room for bad losers at this school." A week later, the school burnt down and Bruce was asked to leave. And because of his record of bad behaviour, other schools refused to take him in, which meant that within 2 weeks, Bruce had lost everything except his parents, his little sister Kitty, and their house on stilts. Poor Kitty. The fact that Bruce spent all his time at home from then on meant that she was now the sole recipient of his nasty attentions. The trouble was that she didn't care a flying awk about winning or losing. She liked flowers and fluffy cloud paintings in the sky. This suited boastful Bruce right down to the ground. There could be nobody easier to beat than his weedy little sister, who couldn't even throw a tennis ball beyond the end of her shoes. He challenged Kitty to all sorts of games that he knew she couldn't win on account of him being twice her age, twice her weight and twice her height. He mashed her at kickboxing, basketball, koala lifting, saying the alphabet backwards, spider chasing and dragging a 5-kilogram bag of potatoes up the outdoor ladder in the fastest time. Kitty didn't understand the rules of the last one. No, Bruce, not how do I do it, why, what's the point? Because I'm the strongest, that's why, he hollered. But we know that already, she sighed, so we don't need to drag potatoes up ladders to prove it. Then I'm the winner, Bruce crowed, punching the air and pushing his leering face into Kitty's. The great and glorious winner, and you are the sad little loser. I'm the best, and you're the worst. I'm good, and you're bad. I'm handsome, and you're ugly. You're pathetic, Kitty said, as she skipped up the ladder into the house. No, that's you, Bruce shouted after her, but it didn't sound convincing. Sometimes he made up games so that only he knew the rules. Then if she started to win, he could change them. They played emu croquet, in which the hoop was made by the emu's curved neck when its head was buried in the sand. But Kitty's ball hit the emu on the ear, and when it knocked her to the ground and bit her, Bruce declared himself the winner by 1 fall and a submission. They travelled into the outback to play bush snooker, where the object of the game was to whack a rolled-up hedgehog into a kangaroo's pouch. The kangaroo was tied down for Bruce's go, and he scored 5 hedgies in a row, followed by a double roller, a roo-poo and a bat in the basket. But when it was Kitty's go to hit the hedgehog, Bruce said it was that time in the game to bounce the pouch. And he untied the kangaroo, which promptly hopped off, leaving Kitty nothing to aim at. Apparently, this made Bruce the winner. When they played trivial barbecues, Bruce asked Kitty all sorts of questions about barbecues to which nobody could possibly have known the answers. Questions like, who invented fire? And when Kitty answered, prehistoric man, he said, yeah, but what was his name? She didn't know. Neither did Bruce, but he didn't have to answer it. He got the easy question like, Bruce, do you cook meat on a barbecue? Yes, 2 points, I win. And sometimes they played ordinary games and Bruce made sure he won by cheating. When they played dominoes, he took Kitty's hamster hostage and threatened to bury it alive with a nail through its head if she didn't let him lay the last piece. When they played table football, he disabled her goalie with chewing gum. When they got ready for bed after their bath, he called it a race and put a big black spider into Kitty's pyjamas so that he'd be ready first. Then one day, Kitty had had enough. They must have played 1,000,000 games and Bruce won them all. He was cock-a-hoop and was forever running round the room, punching the air and whooping. Kitty tried not to let it get to her, but it was hard. Her brother's transformation from sad sap to world champion of everything had made him unpleasantly cocky. Bruce had become a bold-hearted braggart who thought he was halfway to God. He strutted around the stilted house with a smug, self-satisfied smile on his face, like he was king of the world. I'm the best, he said to Kitty. I am the greatest human being whatever played games. You're just a bug by comparison, a titchy-witchety. You're nothing. Kitty would have forgiven him anything, but boasting was nasty. She wanted to take him on. She wanted to prove him wrong. She was somebody. She was Kitty. For the first time in her life, she wanted to win. She'd have liked to have popped him one on his big fat gob, but she knew he'd only hit her harder, so instead she said, "Why don't we ever play board games?" Bruce stopped celebrating and jumped off the sofa. "We can play board games," he said warily, but he didn't mean it. Over the months, Kitty had sussed that there was one type of game Bruce had never played: board games. "I bet I can beat you," she smirked mischievously. "Of course you can't," Bruce swaggered. "You can't beat an egg." "So why are you trembling?" she asked. "I'm not," he barked, but he was. Kitty had produced a game of snakes and ladders. "Is it 'cause you're scared you might lose?" she giggled. "Is it 'cause you play it with dice?" Bruce had broken out into a sweat. It was the dice. He never played anything with dice because dice relied on chance, and where there was chance there was always the possibility that he might lose. And Bruce was not a loser. Not anymore. He had a reputation to maintain. "I'm waiting," she said. On the other hand, he hadn't lost a game for 2 months, so why should he lose one now? It was only his squitty little sister. He took the board off Kitty and opened it onto the table. Besides, if he got into a pickle, he'd just cheat. "You can start," he said magnanimously, rolling the dice across the board. Kitty threw a 6, then a 5, and whipped up the first ladder. He threw a 3 and stayed where he was. She threw another 6, missed 2 snakes, climbed a second ladder, threw a 2 and was already halfway home, while he threw a 1 and barely moved. He glowered at his lucky sister and left the dice on his side of the board so that she'd have to reach across for it. "Can't you pass it?" she asked. "No," he said. "Get it yourself." The bad-tempered loser was waking up again. She rolled a 4 and hit the next ladder. "Ah, that's not fair," he screamed. "I'm changing the rules." "You can't do that," said Kitty. "Who's going to stop me?" he snarled. "From now on, you go down ladders and up snakes." Kitty had 3 ladders between her and the finish, whereas Bruce had 15 snakes he could climb up. He threw a 6, hopped up 1 snake, threw another 6, hopped up a second, and finished with a 4, putting him just behind Kitty. "Your go," he grinned. "Fine," she said, throwing a 5 and leaping over 2 ladders in one go. "I'm nearly there." And then it happened. Bruce threw a 2 and hit the top of a ladder. "Down you go," laughed his sister. "Down ladders, up snakes." His face clouded over. His mouth set square. His hands trembled. "But those aren't the rules," he hissed. "Don't you know nothing? You can only go down snakes." Kitty couldn't believe it. "But you said..." "Nothing! I said nothing! Rules are rules. You're the one who's breaking them." Bruce's eyebrows were twitching. His eyes were red and puffy. He was tugging at his hair like a haunted man. He'd spent so long winning that he'd forgotten what it felt like to lose. "I can do anything I want," he screamed as the bad loser inside his head took control. He picked up the board and crossed to the front door. "I can go up and down ladders and snakes any way I like." And with that, he hurled the board off the balcony and tripped over the pet koala. He grabbed for the handrail but missed, and the next thing he knew, he had slipped into space and was sliding down the ladder towards the ground, where a hissing frenzy of snakes was waiting to eat him. Good day, sports.